I will proceed with talking about coping with life after losing a loved one. I have a few objectives. Of course, we want to examine losses, both primary and secondary, understand grief and mourning, explore ways to care for yourself, and increase your ability to cope with difficult days after this significant loss. The industry disclaimer is that PFF, it does not represent anything that I'm going to say to you today. And then I like to say I have my own humanistic disclaimer. I'm human. I have lost individuals that I love and care for. And I also want to take this time to say that I understand that each individual here has a different relationship with their loved one. And so I just like to say that you can participate, ask questions, you can cry, you can laugh, you can just be silent. And I just want to say that I do honor that, and I reflect, and I respect that. But I do encourage you to participate. Thank you. I want to start off with a little poem, and it goes, when you lose someone you love, your life becomes strange. The ground beneath you becomes fragile. Your thoughts make your eyes water, and then some dead echo drags your voice down where words have no confidence. Your heart has grown heavy with loss. And though this loss has wounded others too, no one knows what has been taken from you when the silence of absence deepens. Flickers of guilt kindle regret for all that was left unsaid and done. There are days when you wake up happy, again inside the fullness of life, until the moment breaks and you are thrown back onto the dark tide of loss. Days when you have your heart back. You are able to function well until in the middle of work or an encounter, suddenly without any warning, you are ambushed by grief. It becomes hard to trust yourself. All you can depend on now is that sorrow will remain faithful to itself. More than you, it knows its way and will find the right time to pull and pull the rope of grief until that coil hill of tears has reduced to its last drop. Gradually, you will learn acquaintance with the invisible form of your departed. And when the work of grief is done, the wound of loss will heal, and you will have learned to wean your eyes from that gap in the air and be able to enter the hearth in your soul where your loved one has awaited your return all the time. And that is a poem called For Grief by John O'Donohue. And I just like to use poetry sometimes as a way to express myself because sometimes words don't always give true meaning. So we know that there are many sources of loss. They can be sudden or predictable. I like to tell people that if you've gone through this journey with someone with a chronic illness, even though those things are predictable, oftentimes they're still reflected as sudden. And so when you think about those sources of loss, they are the death of a parent, it could be a child, it could be just that life-changing diagnosis or illness. It's the loss of independence. Also, maybe it's been a close friend. And if there are any healthcare professionals, there is that loss of someone that you were providing care for many years. There are a lot of losses that happen because of work changes and retirement and unemployment, and of course, just becoming disabled. And so I take this moment to let you think about what your personal experience of loss has been. And then there are secondary losses, the loss of identity. Maybe it was your husband, it may have been a sibling, so learning not to be Mrs. So-and-so, or the wife of, can be very devastating. That's a part of your identity that's also lost. Or being someone's, having those future dreams or those future plans, those are secondary losses as well. The financial support, we often know that comes with going through illness with someone. There has been the loss of having that secondary employment, or maybe medical bills and the cost of what it's taken to care for a loved one. And then the loss of traditions, not being able to share holidays the same, birthdays, Valentine's Day. Friendships and that loss of privacy. You're now known as the person who lost their spouse or their brother or their mother or their loved one. And so a lot of that privacy has been taken out. And so again, I just leave those dots for you to fill in the blank spaces of what those secondary losses have been for yourselves. So we ask our question in ourselves sometimes, what is grief? And I like to say, simply put, it's just a reaction to the loss. And a lot of times people think that they've heard these stages of grief by Kubler-Ross. And I say in the first part, that's what you're hoping for. But the second piece is more or less what it really looks like for you. The denial, the anger, the depression, that bargaining, and then that acceptance. And each day, I think you feel those emotions differently. And so I don't want you to think that grief is something linear. You don't come to an end. I think you just have a new reality. I hope you take this message that our grief is just as individual as we as people are. And also, grieving is a highly individualized experience. There's no right or wrong way to grieve. And I also say that it depends on many factors. Some of you may have had anticipatory grief because you were caring for someone, you kept hearing bad news over and over, or every hospitalization made you think that that was going to be the last moment. And it also has a lot to do with your own personality and your coping style. And your own life experiences. I tell people, if there was a lot of struggling that happened during your life, sometimes the grieving process can be just as difficult. And I didn't bring in trauma experiences with this, but I do want to make mention of understanding that there could be some previous trauma that has been a result of losses. And your faith, and how, of course, significant this loss has impacted you. So the word normal is subjective. I think there are some natural grief responses, having difficulty concentrating, sadness or feeling depressed, irritable or angry, frustrated or misunderstood, being nervous or fearful, also being numb or unmotivated. I think today you all being here may have been the first step of acknowledging that you know you need to hear this information. But there are others who probably should be in the room and they're just not ready yet. And then I also like to take a pause to think about children in grief, because if your spouse's loss, that may have reflected a grandchild who has missed a grandfather, or your own adult children, and how we have to make mention of their loss. Because I think a lot of times we take children for granted that they'll just roll with the punches. And I did bring some materials up here if any of you are thinking about your grandchildren or other little ones in your families. Because their response to grief may present a similar or different grief reaction according to how much they were told and how much they've been a part of that process. But I want to take some time to also talk about prolonged and complicated grief. That is where people are yearning to be with their loved one. They have this feeling of being stuck, and it has lingered for a lot longer than it should have. And I will say, when people have prolonged or complicated grief, that is the time that they probably need to be seeking more therapeutic interventions. a wish to die and join their deceased one, avoidance or not wanting to talk about the deceased are certainly some of those reactions that we see. Just know that if that reaction continues to linger or if it is causing significant distress in individuals, certainly seeking mental health treatment should be what is done. So there is a quote, pain doesn't last, and when it's gone, we have something to show for it, and that's growth. And I know a lot of times, depending on where you are in this journey, many people say, I'm just not there yet. But we're going to just talk about ways to reflect on things that you can do and take part. And what is mourning? Well, mourning is just that outward expression of grief. It is the things that we do, such as crying and talking about our loved one. And there are 6 needs of mourning that a Dr. Wolfeld has written about. And I want to take a minute just to talk about those 6 needs of mourning, and you can ask yourself, where do I fall in this? But step 1 is acknowledging the reality of the death. And it can take weeks or months for you to get to this reality that your loved one is no longer here with you. You want to start to replay events surrounding the death. And talking about it makes it real. And so oftentimes people avoid talking about it. But that replaying of the events are certainly ways to acknowledge the reality. Embracing the pain of the loss. Now, people will tell you, don't talk about it, we don't want to hear about it, but really and truly, we naturally don't want to do this, but become acquainted with your pain. Give it a voice. If it's anger, be able to acknowledge that that's how you're feeling today. Remembering the person who died. There are photos and souvenirs. People think you should get rid of things. I tell people, you have to do those things at your own time. I know getting rid of articles of clothing and clearing out closets are some of the most difficult times for people who have lost a loved one. Remembering and sharing the past, though, makes hoping for the future possible. And so if you start to go through those artifacts, really start to think about the things that are really important to hold on, share memories. If you donate items to a loved one or to a family member, talk about the significance of it. My father lost his husband. My husband lost his father, and he was a Mason, and a cousin had a ring that she had found in his uncle's belongings, and she called him over. And he was sharing that she wanted to gift that ring to him because it was important to his uncle and to her, and she just didn't want to donate it. And so, given that story behind why she felt it was important, certainly made it a lot more memorable for him and for her. Developing a new self-identity. Self-identity is the way you see yourself. It's your new role. It's now that you won't be Mrs. Smith or Mrs. Graham. It's also that reality that you might be the new person taking out the trash. And that might have been something that your loved one always done. It's also natural to question why and how. And that goes on to that search for meaning. And you may struggle with your faith, and you may have some spiritual conflicts, but I think oftentimes trying to search for that meaning is crucial for you. And then I can't stress looking for support from others is significant. It is not a sign of weakness. Going to grief therapy groups, starting a grief therapy group. Oftentimes I hear people saying, I just can't find grief support. And so I've talked to people within the community about starting a grief support group. And so these are some ways that you can care for yourself. And yes, I did put participating in a funeral or a memorial service or other traditions, because sometimes I think especially people just think that the funeral is such a hard time, but it gives other people the chance to come through and share their respects as well. Give yourself grace. The days that are bad days, it's okay. I think it's harder when the days become weeks or months, and that's when there's time to worry. Share the stories when you can. I can't tell you how many times I've been at the bedside at the actual time of death and entering in the room and just asking a simple question like, tell me about Joe, and how much that changes with families because everyone wants to share their stories. And if you were in the previous presentation about narrative medicine, you know the importance of people having a story. Plan your day activities. Today I will. And that sort of is more for you. Today I will go to that supermarket. Today I will try to do X, Y, and Z. There are different things that you can do to plan your day. Some people put it in their calendars, in their phones. Some people will actually write it and put it up on a sticky note on their mirrors. But it's a great way to think about what you're going to do each and every day. Making a comfort kit. And comfort kits are subjective to what you feel are comforting. But a thing like chocolate cookies or sweet tea or a photo, having those things with you to be able to use as a period to reflect on. And grief journaling. A lot of times people don't like to write or journal, and I did provide a goodbye letter that will help in things that you might want to do to use for prompting, and it gives a message or a story that you're writing about your loved one. And music, and our next presenter will talk more about music and how reflective that can be for you. And again, I can't say it enough. And not just participating in a grief group, but also just participating in any support groups. So I take this time for you to have some self-reflection about what does a meaningful life mean to you, and do you believe you're living a meaningful life even though you've lost your loved one? And what ways can you do to plan for an activity each and every day? And what do you do to cope? What suggestions do you all have for coping? For me, it's massage, or I like to walk. I know it's super warm in here, so I can't wait to get outside and get some fresh air. But those are things that I like to do to cope. And oftentimes, you think about the things that you did with your loved one, acknowledging whether you still want to continue to do those things, or if you want to try new activities. I think that's very important. And so here are also some more journaling prompts. Today I remembered, if I could say something to you, I would say, the hardest time of day is, the thing I miss the most about you is, besides grief, I'm feeling. And I think that makes you start to think about other emotions. And never feel guilty for having a good day. Laughter is so important for our souls. And I always say, my grandmother would love to know that I'm laughing. She would hate for me to be wallowing in self-pity because she taught me so many things about what it means to live. And so I always take my opportunity to acknowledge that losing her makes me a better me because of all the things that she has taught me. And then think about one quote that expresses how you're feeling right now. And again, I do have some things that will mimic this in the handouts. And so if there are anybody that's in here that just want to know how to help someone else who's grieving, the first thing is listen. Just that power of presence. Encourage storytelling. Again, once people are able to share what their loved one meant to them, it can be so cathartic for them. Be curious. Ask about what life is like now and who's supporting you now. Acknowledge their pain. Do not minimize their grief. And I always say visit, call, or text. And it's okay to send flowers 6 months, a year from now. If you know that Valentine's Day was very important to them and you just want to be doing something special, send them a card or send them flowers. And that's just a way of letting them know that someone is still thinking of them. In our church, we have a widows ministry, and we buy cards and flowers for each one of the members of our church who have lost their spouses. And we hear a lot about how much that has meant to them. And then I wouldn't be a social worker if I wouldn't give you some resources. Many hospice agencies and funeral homes often offer grief support. In most communities, the hospice agencies will allow it to be a community outreach type of support group. Some of them are closed. They're about 8 weeks. But don't be afraid to call and see where that support can come from. Griefshare.org is another resource. Compassionate Friends, which focuses on the loss of a child, and they're great. Psychology Today is a therapy locator. You can put in your zip code, you can put in your insurance or payer source, and you can actually talk about the things that you would want, such as grief, loss of a spouse or loss of a child. And then Lisa Appello, Hope and Grief Guide is a really good one. I will tell you it's a religious or spiritual type of resource, but I think that's important for a lot of individuals who might be struggling with their faith. And then Amazon has a lot of grief journals. I just put Mia Roldan here. She's a clinical social worker as well. I just like the way her grief journal, it reflects, it allows for a lot of healing and reflection. And those are my references. So, of course, many people think that the holidays is a joyful time of year. It's filled with sights and sounds and traditions, and it's often associated with seasonal cheer. But we know it's actually frightening. It is probably one of the scariest times that many people who have lost a loved one can face. Not all holidays were created equal. You heard me talk about Valentine's Day. Sometimes when you have lost a loved one, these dates might be more significant than Christmas or Hanukkah. It's those anniversaries and birthdays and weddings, Valentine's Day and Mother's Day, or even Father's Day. Easter, if your family celebrated that. These traditions, the first day of spring, a football or a sports season. I met my husband at a Super Bowl party, so Super Bowl is very important. You heard I'm from North Carolina. So those things are very reflective for us. The annual summer vacation. For some people, it may have been hard to be in Orlando because this might be a hot vacation and visitation spot. So we know that holidays are very stressful, and it's really a stressful time when you haven't lost a loved one. And so if it's a recent loss, feelings of grief can be fresh. Memories certainly serve as a constant reminder of the loss. I tell people to take and acknowledge and anticipate that the first holiday season is always the most difficult. And some people find it comforting to be with family and friends, and some people do not want to be. And you have to ask yourself, what will you choose to do? And then watching others celebrate can often be painful and overwhelming. And so how do you deal with festive stress? And again, all of these things, people who are going to work every day have not lost a loved one, they are feeling festive stress. It's that time off or the isolation. It's what am I going to give others? Do I need to be receiving gifts? I need to go shopping. We already talked about the secondary loss of finances, and so now people tack that on during the holidays, and so people may not think about you being financially strapped during the holidays, and so the financial worries about going to holiday parties or entertaining and decorating, all those things just make it sound stressful for me just saying it. But ways to cope with your loved one, I always say you can create new traditions that accommodate your current situation. So if you don't feel like being a part of the gift exchange, you say that to your friends and your family that, you know, this year it's just really difficult for me. I don't feel that I can participate. And again, though, if you do feel like you still want to participate, do that. But give yourself some grace, as I said previously. Tell them, I'll come by for an hour. So start to set that precedence of what you can handle. But these are also ways to cope. Light a candle in honor of your loved one. Some people like a moment of reflection, putting a bouquet of flowers out. If it was something that maybe you lost a husband and there were other things that he really liked to have, putting those out to recognize and memorialize your loved one. Visiting the cemetery or decorating a memorial site. People often play a favorite song. Again, reading poems, writing period is a great way of reflection. And I'm sure you have a plethora of other ideas. And then I always say having a moment of silence during a holiday toast to honor your loved one, just to acknowledge that, his presence may be here, or this would be a fun time that he truly would have enjoyed. I think those things matter a lot. If you are someone that lost a spouse and maybe he or she did all the cooking, not wanting to feel that pressure, having other people say, I'll cook that for you, or not trying to replicate that meal. Sometimes people do like to try to replicate it. So I developed a little mnemonic about holiday, just for you to have as a takeaway. Have a plan, taking things one day at a time. It takes energy to avoid a situation, so I think the best thing to do is confront that situation. So if there are friends and family saying, I'm just not ready to celebrate with everyone, but maybe on Saturday we can meet for coffee. One, that takes away all of the people around you and having this pity party, and it gives you some leverage on how much time you want to spend with others. One day at a time. Take each and everything one day at a time. You got to live in the moment. Feel free to make changes if you feel they are necessary. Allow yourself to feel and express your feelings, and set your own responsibilities and expectations. Learn something new. Try to balance sorrow for their death and celebration of their life, and make the difficult days more meaningful. Again, I talked about don't feel guilty for having fun. Make new traditions. Sometimes there were things that you wanted to do, but you weren't able to because you may have been taking care of your loved one. So now is the time to think about what you're going to do different. And give yourself permission to celebrate and take pleasure in doing things that you always wanted to do. Identify ways to honor and celebrate yourself and your loved one. Attend a widow's supper club or start one. Donate a cake on their birthday or a wedding anniversary to someone in need. Or just buying those things for yourself and having a celebration in moderation, because we always teach about moderation. Give to a charity in their memory. Plant a tree. Again, sending yourself fresh flowers. Order from a favorite restaurant, or cooking a favorite meal, or having those things delivered to you. We're in 2023, so now you don't always have to cook. Call a friend and share a favorite memory, or tell a funny story. Those are ways to identify and honor him or her. Do what feels right. Don't be afraid to have fun. Laughter and joy are not disrespectful. I can't stress that enough. Sometimes you have to skip it all together and get some rest. Maybe you want to surround yourself with people who love and support you. Don't feel obligated. Take care of yourself. Avoid using alcohol to self-medicate your mood, and then make some time for solitude and remembering. Acknowledge your feelings. Be aware when you're sinking into some territory that is not feeling right, and that's that prolonged and complicated grief that I talked about. Talk to loved ones or a mental health professional about your emotions. Allow yourself to feel and be present with your emotions each and every day. And practice mindfulness. That deep breath that I had to take before coming into the second presentation, because I'm so hot up here, it helped though. Sometimes you just need to pause and take those deep breaths and remember the things that are around you each and every day. What do you feel? What do you see? What do you smell? All of those things are practicing mindfulness. And again, I left a takeaway for you is the why, the you can. Life may never be the same, but you can and you will get through this. There is hope for healing and for growth. And so I wanted to leave a gift for you, and it is actually a replica of that little card that says gifts to give to yourself. And I would say that self-care is so important. And so I tell people just jot down some ways that you're going to care for yourself during this holiday. Keep that in your pocket, in your purse. I think sometimes actually writing it down and being able to look at it and thinking about the things that are important to you and what you can do in brief moments are so important. And so I close with just, we always heard about Caregiver Bill of Rights and Residents Bill of Rights. And so this is sort of a Bill of Rights that I'm extending to you that says, this holiday, I will cut myself some slack, I'm grieving. I will embrace the reality that there will be tears. I will not get wrapped up in what other people expect of me. I will look for the small moments of peace and comfort. I will reach out to and appreciate those who support me. I will take space from those who do not support me. I will remember that traditions can ebb, flow, and flex. I will take a break if I need one. I will seek comfort in memories, and I will remain open to joy even when it feels impossible. And I thank you, and I know we're going to have some questions at the end, and now I'll turn it back over to Abigail. Thank you all so much.
Good afternoon. I want to thank each of you for being here. This is probably, for some of you, probably a very difficult time, and I've really appreciated what Keisha had to say about grief and grieving, and I want to honor that for everyone in this room. I am going to start with a song. It's called Remember Me, and it's from the movie Coco, if any of you have seen it. It's actually, it's a Disney movie, Pixar, I believe, which is kind of the perfect place to be here in Orlando. So I'm just gonna sing this song, and you're welcome to sing along if you know the song. You can look at the lyrics. If you just wanna close your eyes, that's fine too. Remember me. I have to say goodbye, remember me. Don't let it make you cry, for even if I'm far away, I hold you in my heart. I sing a secret song to you each night we are apart. Remember me. Though I have to travel far, remember me. Each time you hear a sad guitar, know that I'm with you the only way that I can be, until you're in my arms again. Remember me. So I don't know how many of you have actually seen the movie Coco. So a little story. When I was invited to come to present on this topic, I had reached out to a friend of mine who's also a music therapist and had said, can you recommend some songs to kind of inspire this brief talk that I'm going to be giving? And this was one of the songs that she had recommended. And honestly, I'd never seen the movie. And I had heard some beautiful things about this movie, and I had kind of tucked it away as a movie that I wasn't really ready to see because I knew that it was probably going to get me emotional, and I kind of, didn't want to put myself into that position. I'm sure all of us can relate to feeling that way at some point. And I watched the movie, and this song comes back over and over and over in the movie, and it's based on the Dia de los Muertos tradition of remembering your loved ones that have passed. And so it's a very sweet movie, and also talks about the generational remembering of loved ones. So even though someone has passed generations before, the tradition is to continue to remember that loved one. So if you haven't seen it, I do recommend it as a movie. So I would imagine that there are some of us, maybe most of us in this room, that has loved a lost one, or lost, a loved one. But maybe there's people in this room who are still in the caregiving. I'm not sure. Maybe you're healthcare workers that want to learn a little bit more about the grief process. But I want to normalize grief, kind of going off of what Keisha said about grief. So if the tears come, and they're welcome here. Music, we oftentimes attach memories and emotion to music. So if you think about like the Star Wars theme or a TV show theme song, will automatically bring you a memory of that, or a thought about it, or an emotion attached to that song. It could be a particular event in life. It could be a song that you shared with somebody. It could be a particular time in life. I find that a lot. I'll hear a song and I'll be like, oh, I was doing this at that time, or I was at this point in my, in my life. And so music can be a really good tool to connect to those memories and to individuals, either through songs that mean something to you, maybe only to you, that might remind you of your loved one, or it could be a song that your loved one was really attached to. And, music is there to help us cope by bringing us closer to the memory of the individual that we lost, instead of kind of, pushing it away. So to honor your loved one, what better way to do that is to honor yourself and honor your grief in that process. So one of the things that you can do is to create a playlist, maybe of their favorite songs. Nowadays with things like Spotify, that's really easy to do. Or if you are a CD listener, is to create a CD list of songs that helps you to connect to your loved one. The other thing would be to create a list for you that is your memories of your loved one that helps you connect with them. So pick music that resonate and enhance your feelings of that loved one, and so to put yourself in the space of celebrating, joyful, could be sadness, can be memories. It could be all emotions, doesn't have to just be sadness. Joy, music, people attach to joy and happiness to a lot of songs as well. And so to also use music that gives you the feeling of joy in remembering your loved one. So I wouldn't be a music therapist if I didn't ask for participation from the audience. So I'm going to take a minute here. I have a whole bag of instruments. I'm going to come around, and if you are so inclined, I'm going to have you pick one out. If you don't want to play one, that's totally fine as well. So we're doing this to give you a way of kind of hearing music that is the same song but sounds different and can put you in a different mood. So in music, we have this principle where we match the mood of someone using the music, and then we kind of change the music a little bit to get to a different place. And so this is a little bit different because I'm going to sing the same song, and you guys are going to play along. So test your instruments out. Yes. Yes, you guys have good rhythm. Okay. So we're going to sing through the song. We're going to do it one time through. Keep playing. You guys got to be my beat keepers. Yep. Remember me. I have to say goodbye. Remember me. Don't let it make you cry. For even if I'm far away, I hold you in my heart. I sing a secret song to you each night we are apart. Remember me. I have to travel far. Remember me. Each time you hear a sad guitar, know that I'm with you the only way that I can be, until you're in my arms again. Remember me. I see some release there at the end. A little bit of giggling, some smiling, a release. Did you guys see that too? Yeah. So we can talk about difficult things, we can be in a difficult space, and we can also use music as a release, as a way to get to a place that helps us remember and be able to move forward. So that was my hope with playing this song in a different style that would give you an opportunity to hear it in a different way. Thank you.